Welcome to Murf+E Unfiltered, Zero BS Biz Talk. I'm Kathleen Murphy, and I'm here with my co-host, Eliot Grossman. How are you, Eliot?
Hello, Kathleen Murphy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I thought we'd be in the studio today, but thanks to COVID again, we're doing Zoom. So thanks to Zoom for making this happen for us today.
Yep.
Well, today I picked a topic that I initially was thinking about doing something that was a little bit more upbeat, but then I realized there's sort of a twist to this topic where in actuality it is upbeat. It just may come across in terms of the title as not necessarily being upbeat, but it's intended to be upbeat, even though I'm prefacing it saying that it's not. But let's dive in here and see what we got. All right.
Absolutely, Murph. It's how you look at it, right? Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty?
Precisely. That's exactly right. Today's show is called Got Negative Talk, Self-Talk, Get Rid of It. And the overview for this show is we can all agree that not everyone is an optimist. However, we all have the skills and ability to cheer ourselves on and to ignore the negative talk that sometimes is playing in our minds. There is what I call an ignore button. You must have to know how to use it and to be able to press it at some point. So that's really critical. Now, let's face it, based on the time of where we're at right now, the end of 2020, it's been a tough year. If you turn on any kind of news, chances are the news isn't going to be that great. It's tending to be erring on the negative side, I would say, with some few exceptions, thanks to the good news about a vaccination coming out that can help us with one of our conundrums, which is the pandemic that we're dealing with. I'm an optimist. And so for me, I have to try to tune out that negativity. And it's something that shouldn't be that hard for me. But in fact, because I am an optimist, I have to, be more aware of focusing on things that are erring on being more positive and trying to stay away from those negative aspects of life. But I don't always necessarily think about this, but I tend to wonder from time to time if people are born optimists. I think I was. I just naturally, my mom, I was talking to her earlier today, and she said, you've always been happy. You wake up in the morning, you're happy. You kind of go throughout your day, you're happy. So I guess perhaps it's innate and just based on the environment that I'm in. Would you classify yourself as an optimist, E?
Well, yeah, Murph. First of all, let me apologize. I'm in my son's room doing this podcast, and so if you see any messes in the background, you get it. But yeah, absolutely, right. So that's an easy thing to answer. I believe that positivity breeds positivity, and vice versa.
Sure.
And it's really not a lot of fun being around negative people.
Not at all.
And so for me, I just find life a whole lot easier to go through. And a lot of my focus today, Murph, is truly going to be not about the professional and how we are at work as much as is about, I'm not here to educate people on life lessons, but what I am here to do is talk about, negative self-talk and how we all deal with it, like you said, but how do I deal with it and how can I help people deal with it? So yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, I'm a positive person and we all face challenges in life, but it's just a whole lot easier to be positive than it is negative, right? You get more, what's the old saying, get more bees with honey?
That's right. I like that one, especially. That is absolutely true. One of the things that I think about is the importance of having a daily ritual that helps you with being able to be looking at things from a more positive angle. And the days that I don't necessarily practice a daily ritual, and it could be something as simple as just getting up, and the daily ritual could literally be making myself a cup of coffee in terms of, okay, I know that I'm going to have a better day if I start with coffee than if I try to start off the day without that caffeine. That let's face it, that may be a little bit difficult, but it's it could be any number of different things that someone does. And I think about it from the perspective also, does it in fact get easier to dismiss negative self-talk? We all have it. We're always, I think, combating this negative self-talk. I liken kind of explaining what I mean by that to suggest if you were to have little cheerleaders, one on either shoulder, one would be a good cheerleader cheering you on, saying, let's go, you're doing great. The other one is negative, talking and yapping in your ear, not necessarily encouraging you. And I like to suggest that it's possible to basically just kind of flip that negative one off and substitute it with a more positive one. But let's face it, because we know that this negative self-talk is something that a lot of people contend with, I'm constantly aware of the fact that I'm not the only one that has this, and that I'm always kind of working on it. Unfortunately, because I am an optimist, I tend to listen more so to the positive cheerleader, if you will. But it does pop up in people's minds, and so I'm sure this happens to you. Is this something that you're regularly contending with, or people that are?
Of course, Murph. So we're human, right? And our brains work in crazy ways. I wish I could stop it and shut it off.
Yes.
You talk about when negativity pops in, how do you shut it off?
Right.
So like you, I have a ritual. We actually kind of experienced or practiced this ritual together when we worked together. If we were both miserable, we were negative, we came out of challenging meetings, we're put in really challenging situations that kind of, were breeding negativity around the building.
Right.
We'd get up and leave.
Yes.
Not leave all day, but we go leave for 20 or 30 minutes. I do the same thing now. I get up, I start my day, I go get iced coffee because that's what I like to do year round. And if I'm not traveling, even if I'm traveling for business, but when I'm here, I get out, I get in my truck, I drive around, I listen to sports talk or music, which really calms my head and gets me in a much better situation. So, that old saying of, did you woke up on the wrong side of the bed? I think some people just naturally are happy being unhappy. They're happy that they're happy being negative.
Right.
It's how they go through life. And I choose to go through my professional life and my personal life in a positive way. Negative talk pops in all the time, Murph. It pops in your head, talking to yourself. It's crazy, right? It happens. How do you deal with it? How do you face it? How do you combat it?
My feeling also.
What about you?
Well, my feeling also is that being negative takes a lot of energy. It takes less energy to be positive. And so I've got some tips for people in terms of what they could do if they've got the negative self-talk and they're trying to work on combating this, whether it's daily basis, once a week, etc. First tip would be, when the negative self-talk starts up, think about your attitude. Is your mood not where you want it to be? If possible, turn on your headphones and listen to your favorite song. You talked about listening to some music, right? There you go. Mm-hmm. Cue that up. Excuse me. And this can help to course correct how you're feeling and set you back into that direction, get you back on the right rail that you want to be going down on. And it's really more about having that positive mindset, if you will. And mindset's critical. I'm going to bring that up a couple different times just to remind people that we can flick that switch and shut off that negative thinking in our brain. It is possible. We may have to work at it a little bit harder, and there may be things that we need to do to make that happen, to enact it, but it is possible. Another thing that you can do is think about, depending on the time of the day, let's face it, we're more tired perhaps in the afternoon. You start to, wind down a little bit. You hopefully get a second wind, if you will, at some point later in the day. But this can also, as a factor, contribute to your negative self-talk because you're tired. So get up, do something, anything like move around is something that I suggest. Maybe a second cup of coffee in the afternoon. I particularly like that one for me personally. But, look for striking that delicate balance of getting yourself back to a place where the factors of being tired aren't going to contribute to that negative self-talk that's happening for yourself, especially when you're trying to wind down your day and end on a positive note, right?
Hmm.
And then another thing to consider is your diet. I don't have the perfect diet by any stretch of the imagination. And I have a good friend who's a nutritionist. I talk to her about this all the time in terms of, okay, this is what I did today. How did I do? And she's half the time saying, well, you could have done better. But I do the best that I can. But diet can, in fact, play a huge role in terms of how we're feeling. And so I'm sure that on those days that you're not a donut eater, I don't believe, but let's just say one day you wake up with
Once
your
in a
iced
while,
coffee.
Murph, but right, for
Once in a
sure.
while.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Once in a while, you might have a donut with your iced coffee. Sometimes they go together,
Mhm.
But keeping in mind that might be a contributing factor to how you're feeling as well. So go have a piece of fruit. Go eat something that's healthy. Maybe have some nuts or something like that. My nutritionist friend would be extremely happy with me making those suggestions.
Sure.
So I've come a long way.
Right.
And then I would say there are plenty of other things that you can do as well. What about some tips that you might have in terms of when that negative cheerleader starts chirping in your ear and that you don't want to listen to it? What do you do?
Yeah. Again, it's the negative cheerleader. That's again, it's part of our life, right? We deal with it professionally negatively. Um, I just choose to. How does the negativity get into your life, and how does that negativity get on your shoulders? And if it's around people or work, I choose not to be around those people.
Yes.
And I take actually a personal challenge, right? I kind of find it fun to uh, kind of change my brain, change my thinking, whether it's people, most of the time it's, people are an act that puts you in that negative mood.
They can.
I tend to challenge myself in that way. What makes me feel better? What makes me feel positive? Because anybody that tells you they're always in a good mood is full of you know what. Okay? It creeps into our minds. Our lives are challenged. Life is hard, Murph.
It
It's
is.
hard, and we all face challenges. How we deal with those, and how do we absorb the negativity, and how deep do we let it go, or do we take it in? Do we take a deep breath, and how do we get rid of it? And I choose to get rid of it by, you talked about it's a lot easier and expends a lot of energy to be negative, and just to smile. And when you start smiling, it's amazing what a simple smile or a simple laugh or something that you enjoy changes your whole
It's
mindset.
so true. And there's neuroscience behind the fact that when you do smile, if you force yourself to smile, it tricks your brain into actually thinking that you're happy,
Right.
even though you may be completely miserable. So I'll remind myself of this from time to time if I'm sitting there, if I'm really serious, if I'm not necessarily in a good mood, or I'm feeling like I'm heading into a bad mood for whatever reason. I'll remind myself just to smile. Nobody's around, and I just smile. But I mean, look at
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Well,
We're smiling.
because, well, sure. And it's interesting because I haven't decided if I'm going to go back and get my doctorate in neuroscience. I'm
You
thinking about
probably
it.
should.
I just, yeah, I probably should, right? It's brilliant. But this topic just kind of makes me smile in general. And I think it faces more life lessons than it does professionally, because it carries over in both ways.
It does.
And so for me, life is hard. Your mind is an incredible thing, what it can do to you and where it can take you. And
Absolutely. And
simply smiling, like you said, I don't know if they're neurons, but smiling goes from here to here. And next thing you know, like, life is pretty darn
the
good.
endorphins
Because
start
if you
firing.
really
Mhm.
say, I will say this. One of my favorite lines, and people are probably tired of hearing it. I always say, if that's the worst thing that's going to happen to me today, then I've had a pretty good day. Then life isn't that bad.
Right.
And that's a way that I avoid letting negativity creep in. I choose not to let that negative start diving deeper and deeper into my brain,
Sure.
which then takes over my body.
Right.
And I choose not to. So if that's the worst thing that can happen,
Yeah.
No big deal.
then exactly, you have mastered life in a good way at that point. So
Yeah,
I've got a few more tips that I want to share.
I know you do, Murph. Bring them on.
Another tip is to give yourself a pep talk. Let's face it, it's easy enough to do,
Hmm.
because if there isn't somebody around, and there isn't always somebody around, but we can give our pep talk, our own pep talk to ourselves, and do a pretty good job at it, just as well as somebody else might. And so it's important to kind of keep this in mind in terms of being able to do this. And if you don't have things to think about that you can pep talk yourself about, create a list, have it on standby so that when you need it, have it on your phone, just look to it and use it as inspiration to make that negative cheerleader go away. It really works quite well, and it helps to turn down that volume that
Hmm.
you're hearing chirping in your ears.
Hmm.
And then another one is to keep a running list of times you've avoided hearing the negativity, and then think about instances in terms of, is there a pattern to when this is happening? For instance, we talked earlier about the fact that sometimes in the afternoon, late afternoon especially, that might tend to happen. And so be aware of maybe when it's happening, and see what you can do to mitigate the risk of that happening or spiraling out of control. Then, as a bonus tip, I would say to visualize being in a better mood or in a better situation. And when we do that, it can, again, using the power of the neuroscience, trick our brain into feeling a lot better, and having that sort of cheerleader that's positive, reinforcing the information that we want to hear about. um, and then, think about, from your perspective, are there other instances where perhaps you've possibly had to um, talk somebody else out of being in a situation where they just can't seem to get out of their own way?
Yeah, of course, Murph. And a lot of that comes back to, as a sales leader and sales management, you try to keep a good eye on your team. And as
Yes.
I said, everybody goes through various challenges. Most of the time, I have found that when people are struggling, people that have been good, people that have normally done a very good job in this, in the sales world and driving business, start struggling, it normally goes back to the personal world.
Right.
And what are the challenges they're facing? And what's that fine line between talking to them about it and not? Because it's not my business all the time. My job is to kind of drive revenue. My business is also to pay attention to what's going on with my team. And if it starts impacting that, it's easy to see. So I always kind of bridge that gap. How do I talk them out of it? And I try to, not about talking them out. You don't just flip a switch, right? It's not a
Oh,
faucet. You
no.
can't
Right.
turn us on and off, right?
No, I wish.
Again, yeah, our brains are crazy. They work in different ways. And when somebody you're trying to talk negative, say, okay, let's go. You got to pull yourself up. Let's go. That's really not fair. We don't know when you got to walk a mile in someone's shoes. You
Well,
just don't know.
that's just it. Exactly. And then I was wondering if, in fact, if there are any advantages to the negative self-talk. Does that work for some people? Are some people actually inspired by maybe saying things to themselves just to rally themselves to, I don't know, have that switch go off to help them go into a different direction by negative self-talk? I mean,
Of course.
is there a way to actually make that work for you?
Yeah, well, of course. And I think I kind of relate it back to athletics and what you've done and where
Yeah,
you've been. And it's fun to relate athletics into the sales world. And you and I have talked about this many, many times.
sure.
Um, you got to accept that challenge, and that negativity, that's the fun way, right? Don't tell me I can't. Don't tell me there's no
That's
possible
right.
way.
That's right.
You're not good enough. You'll never be an A player. You'll always be a B or a C player. That's where it's fun to accept that challenge and turn that negativity. And that's why a lot of times people say, no chance, you're not going to do that. You can't do that. And I just smile,
Right. And
and,
you
and I
say,
try
thank
to,
you. That's
yeah,
actually
because
going
I
to fuel me to
thank
go
you
do
and I
that.
will show you,
That's right.
right? I'm going to show you.
Absolutely.
There's no way you'll do X amount in gross profit this year.
That's right.
Yes, I will. Don't tell me I can't, because I can.
That's right. That's
And
right.
a lot of that is what is my team facing? How are they doing it? How do I take that negative, like, oh, I'm not going to make my quarter, I'm not going to make it. Well, let's break it down.
Right.
Yeah. Let's break it down into how can we and turn that negative into a
That's
positive.
right.
Instead of making your 10 calls or 10 meetings or what's your plan for the month of January heading off into the new year, how do we get a, I've talked about this in many of our podcasts. I want to make sure I get it right. Plan your work and work your plan.
Exactly.
And if you don't have a plan,
Mm-hmm.
negativity is going to follow, because positive stuff doesn't happen for people that aren't prepared. And
Right.
when you're ready, it's amazing how positive you are. And when you're ready, it's amazing how easy it is to smile and take the negative self-talk that's here and here, and that you talked about, sense like the old animal, right? Angel and
Right.
Devil
Exactly.
and Animal House movie.
Right. That's right. So
And what, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. So you talk about it.
well,
Talk
I was
about the
just going to
same
say,
questions.
basically what you're saying is there is in fact a way to tame that negative cheerleader, if you will, or that devil that sits on your shoulder that you don't want to be contending with. And I think that's really critically important for people to understand, that it is possible to tame that beast, if you will, that's kind of in our minds that we don't want to necessarily be contending with. And I think that's really important to factor in. And you can, if anyone played sports, they'll get this reference in terms of it is possible to bench that negative squawker and just get rid of them, like put them off to the side. They don't have to be there. You're in full control of that. So I think it's really important to factor that in. And we've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope that we've given people some things to think about that will help them in terms of, if in fact that they're trying to tame that negative cheerleader, and to tame that beast of having somebody squawking in their ear that isn't saying those things that are inspirational to them and really pulling down their day not to a place that they want it to be. That there are some tips that maybe we've given to them, one or two, that they can themselves leverage to go into 2021 and to have a much better hour, day, week, month, year, etc.
Yeah,
So
my last tip would be simply this. Self-confidence really goes a long way, and not arrogance. Confidence goes a long way in being positive over negative.
It sure does. Exactly. I would completely agree with that. And that was one of the other things I was going to mention, is that keep your self-confidence in check and do whatever is possible to write your confidence in a way that it's going to be uplifting it. And confidence and fear sometimes are two areas that are going to also impact your ability and your thinking in terms of whether you're thinking positively or negatively. So make sure you keep that in check as well. So I think I'm really excited that we cover this topic today, and I hope that it inspires some people. So I just want to thank you, E, for another fantastic show, wrapping up 2020, which has been a difficult year. And I look forward to 2021 being a much better year. So happy New Year to you. Happy holidays.
You as well, Murf.
See you on the other side.
Yep, right on, Murf.
Yeah.
Yep.
So thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, for watching Murf+E Unfiltered Zero BS Biz Talk. We'll see you the next time. Take care.